You might think that Disney's Ratatouille is all about a rat wanting to become a chef, but in reality, it's all about economics. Don't believe me? Let's start at the beginning. Welcome, learners, to the Ecomicus. My name is Greg, where learning economics is as easy as watching a movie. If you're not familiar with the story of Ratatouille, most people will tell you it's about a rat named Remy wanting to become a cook. Now, in the beginning, we see this rat, and he has a very keen sense of taste and smell. And if that's not weird enough, he actually really loves to cook. And this is where the plot really kicks in. And guess what? The plot is all about economics, because in economics, it's all about scarce resources and how those scarce resources get to be divided up. So how is this connected to Ratatouille? Well, Remy wants to become a cook, right? And in order to become a cook, you need things like education, you need things like cooking supplies, things like that. He doesn't have those. Those are scarce for a rat because guess what? He's not allowed in the kitchen. So he needs to find a way to get those resources, get them allocated to himself. And that is the struggle in this movie. And because he wants to become a cook, he ends up making some pretty poor choices that get him and his family kicked out. And then he arrives at a restaurant in Paris by himself. And that's where we finally meet the character Linguini, who is a low-level employee in this restaurant. Now, there is a soup that is being made pretty terribly. Remy recognizes this, fixes the problem. Everybody loves the soup. Linguini's the one who discovers that Remy made the change, and instead of outing him, he decides to make a deal with the rat. Remy will be able to cook in the kitchen, but he will have to hide himself in order to do so, and Linguini will take credit for it, therefore keeping his job, but he won't be able to control his limbs because Remy will be doing that. Some people might look at this and think that this is a cool little friendship, but guess what? It's not a friendship. This is an economic idea called opportunity cost, where one person actually sacrifices in order to get something that they want. In this case, Remy gives up the glory of being a chef, and Linguini gives up his limbs. And know what happens? They end up being really successful. People love the product that they are putting out. And because people are showing up to this restaurant and paying money in exchange for the food that they want cooked for them, this is what we call a market, which is literally the exchange of goods. In this case, the good that the customers are giving up is currency, and the good that the cooks are giving up is the food. And this is where the plot actually starts picking up because it's all about the three different economies. The market economy versus the mixed and centrally planned economy. A market economy is kind of like a free-for-all. Basically, if it was a market economy, Remy could cook how he wants to and nobody would freak out that it was a rat or shut down a restaurant. In a centrally and mixed economy, it's usually some big overlord, or in this case, a government that puts forth regulations in order to allocate resources in a different way. And so you have Remy on the market economy side, and then you have the regulators on the centrally and mixed economy side. Some other things happen in this movie. They aren't really important. Something about Linguini being involved with a girl, and Remy bringing his family in to steal food in the restaurant. Anyway, that's not important. There is a big, important critic who's about to come. His name is Ego. Ego is the most important and famous food critic in Paris, and they are going to cook for him. And they decide to cook a dish called Ratatouille, which is kind of more of a peasant dish. And when the critic takes his first bite, he is reminded of his childhood, exactly what his mom used to cook for him, and he just feels all the nostalgia rushing back to him, and he loves the food. He loves it so much, in fact, he wants to meet the chef, which is kind of terrifying. I mean, Remy's been kicked out everywhere because he's been a rat who can cook. He's never been appreciated for the skills that he's had. So, of course, he's a little nervous before he gets in there. But when Ego sees that it is a rat that is cooked for him, he doesn't care. And this is where that conflict between the market economy and the centrally and mixed economies, this is where it all comes to a head. Which one is going to win out? And in this case, the market economy wins because Ego recognizes Remy's talent and is fine with paying him in exchange for the food that Remy cooks. This is what we like to call in economics allocative efficiency, where the needs of the consumer are met. Unfortunately, the restaurant is eventually shut down after a glowing review because, well, they discover rats are cooking. But Ego decides to fund a restaurant with Remy and his family cooking. And what this creates economic equity. Economic equity is the fair distribution of resources. In this case, Remy gets to cook and people get to pay him for his services if they want it. And market economy ends up winning in the end. But this rat of a movie isn't the only one that's about economics. Now that you have a basic understanding of the basic terms of economics, it's time to learn all about microeconomics. And the movie that is all about that is Ant-Man and the Wasp. And no, that is not a pun at all. Be sure to check out that video on your way to becoming an economicist like myself. Thanks for watching, everybody, and I'll see you in the next video.